We're here in the headquarters of Instagram with Instagram founder, CEO, Kevin Systrom here in San Francisco. And Kevin, let's talk about the origins of Instagram. Obviously, you have a very diverse background, many different types of studies and interests, but one of the kernels, one of the key things of Instagram came to you or just you got exposed to when you were studying abroad in Florence when you were at Stanford.
Right.
Kind of tell me that story about how your love for these filters or that filter look came about.
I was studying abroad in Florence my junior year at Stanford. And as part of that, I took a photo class because who wouldn't take a photo class? You know, if you're in Italy and you're gonna take photos, it was a lot of fun. But I got there and I had a brand new camera and it was a film camera. I had a really beautiful lens. And I remember becoming friends with the teacher, and the teacher said, listen, like it sounds like you're really, concentrated on perfection and making your photos perfect and sharp. I'm gonna take your camera and I'm gonna give you this. And actually he gave me something similar to this, not exactly this one, but it's a plastic camera and it was called a Holga. Mm-hmm. And the lens is plastic, it's got kind of shoddy construction. There are all sorts of things wrong with plastic cameras. So he said, listen, take this, it's not perfect, but go out and take some photos with it. And I didn't really believe him, so we went out and we started taking photos, and I got back and we started developing them. And they were some of the most gorgeous pictures I've ever seen. And I couldn't believe that a little plastic camera could take photos like this. And what they were they had soft focus, they had light leaks because it turns out the construction of these, the sun gets in and actually exposes your film a little bit. Okay. And because of that, I think I was introduced to a whole new world of, it turns out, square and slightly filtered photography. And on top of all that, I learned that there were these chemicals you could actually buy and put in the development process that tone the film as well. This is why when people say they think college isn't worthwhile and paying all that money to go isn't worthwhile, I actually really disagree, because I think those experiences, those classes that may not necessarily seem applicable in the moment end up coming back to you time and time again, as long as you're taking things that are intellectually interesting. Yeah. And I think going to Florence and taking this photography class, experiences like that are what kind of shape your perspective on the world.
You had an internship at Odeo, which eventually hatched Twitter.
Right.
And it was interesting that Odeo went through a huge pivot. It wasn't working, and they tried something else. They took a new feature that became super successful.
So if you look at the history of successful startups in the world, there are only a couple that have started off with an idea and ended up with that idea. For us, we were doing a check-in app, and the check-in app let you check in at places that you went, like coffee shops or bars, whatever.
Like similar to Foursquare?
Yeah, similar to Foursquare, exactly. But at the time, we decided, unlike any other check-in service, we were gonna let you add a photo along with a check-in. We said, listen, the check-in space is really difficult. People don't want another check-in app. Let's switch this around. So we kind of demoted the check-in and we promoted the photo, and we said, no, you start with a photo and then optionally you can add a location. And it turns out that that was one of the most popular features. And that was really the genesis of the structure of Instagram. And of course, on top of that, we added filters. That was, I think, a breakthrough for us, realizing that we wanted to make photos better for people.
Talking about the filters, which was a huge jump in innovation for Instagram. When you came up with the first filter, you were kind of burnt out, you were frustrated, weren't sure if this whole thing was going to work.
Right.
Tell me about that trip and how the first filter came about.
Yeah, it wasn't that I was burned out, it was more that I needed a vacation. So I took one with my girlfriend to Mexico and this little artist colony called Todos Santos, and we had a small little room with a hammock outside. And I remember being on a walk on the beach with my girlfriend, and we were talking about how do we make this thing successful, and how do we encourage people to take more photos? How do we encourage people to use this over everything else? And the key insight, I think, in that conversation was we wanted our photos to look better. And specifically, my girlfriend wanted her photos to look as good as our friend Greg's. And Greg used all these apps to transform his photos with filters and different effects. And I spent the rest of that day in the room or in the hammock, basically sitting outside trying to figure out how do we transform an image like that. And at the end of that day, there was a breakthrough, and I finally got it. And I remember I had an app that just took one picture with filters. And it was just that one filter called X Pro 2. It would end up being called X Pro 2. And we went around Todos Santos that day taking photos with it, and I had tons of fun. And I realized very quickly how we could take mobile photography and make it extra special by just doing something very simple like that.
You have more than 50 million users right now.
Right.
What are some of your hopes or kind of plans?
Yeah, so I think everyone, that starts a startup, you deal with different scales, but you should always try to understand what you want your startup to be, if it hits 300 million active users, right? And I remember talking with the folks really early at Twitter, and one guy specifically, and he was pitching like someday, celebrities and artists are going to use this to communicate with their fans. And I remember thinking, yeah, right, there's no way that's going to happen. But the key insight there was they were thinking about it from day one. And for us, we've always wanted to create an open platform for visual media. So the ability to tune into anywhere in the world at a moment's notice. So if there's something happening overseas, we want you to be able to tune in and experience that through images. So if there's a protest overseas, or if there's, like, let's say the World Series is going on, or the World Cup, right? Or the Tour de France, or some big event happening overseas like the Tokyo earthquakes. We want you to be able to tune in to the world and see things in a way that you haven't been able to see them before.